All right, so this video is going to be definitely different from any video that I've ever done before because I'm going to do a sort of book report for you guys on the book that helped me sort of understand the mind of a high FI user. Okay, so this is the book. It's called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion by Jonathan Haidt. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I think it's not Height. I think it's Haight. And I know this is backwards in your screen, but that's what this says. And this is positively my favorite book that I have ever read because for me it was the best insight into the mind of somebody who thinks very differently than I do and answered a lot of questions for me about like people's cognitive processes and everything. So what we have here is basically a TI parent and FI trickster, Jonathan Haidt, trying to process and define and explore FI cognition. So in this sense, Jonathan Haidt is essentially a great moralist of our time, and it's interesting that a modern moralist has FI trickster, but we find a lot of great thinkers and logicians who have TI tricksters because they're trying to understand and process it, and they bring it from a different perspective. So what he does is he has done a lot of studies where he asks people different he presents people with different moral conundrums. He tells them stories and then asks them their moral judgment on it. But not only asks them like whether this is good or bad, but asks them to explain why. And I will present you guys with a few of his examples. First one. A family's dog was killed by a car in front of their house. They had heard that dog meat was delicious, so they cut up the dog's body and cooked it and ate it for dinner. Nobody saw them do this. Next one. A man goes to the supermarket once a week and buys a chicken. But before cooking the chicken, he has sexual intercourse with it. Then he cooks it and eats it. Nobody knows that he does this. And then, third one, a woman is cleaning out her closet and she finds an old American flag. She doesn't want the flag anymore, so she cuts it up into pieces and uses the rags to clean her bathroom. Nobody finds out. All right? And what he calls these are basically harmless taboo violations because nobody is harmed in the act and nobody finds out. So what he has essentially done with these stories is removed the ability for people to use TE or FE in their reasoning. So all they're left with is they're able to use FI or TI. Well, TI is not going to make a judgment on whether things are good or bad, but FI is. So it kind of left people, as he described, like morally dumbfounded, where they knew that it was wrong, but they weren't able to explain why. And oftentimes they would try to like invent something invent like some other scenario that could possibly happen that would mean that that person would then be embarrassed or something. It's like, no, I already removed that. Nobody finds out. Nobody knows. The person doesn't feel bad about this. And so they're just kind of like dumbstruck for an explanation. Now, the way that he describes FI, and he never calls it like FI. He doesn't talk about the cognitive functions at all. This is just like my evaluation of the book and my understanding of what like he's talking about and doing here. But he describes it as an intuitive process and not using intuition in the same like word as like NI or NE in MBTI, but in that like FI just like naturally just knows whether something is right or wrong. And you know, as a subjective process, TI works this same way. So because FI intuitively has this like gut feeling about things, what they are doing then when you ask them why is they are going to their TE to explain what their FI just naturally connects with. Because if you take that away, then it's like, well, how could you not know that's bad? And it's like, well, why? And they can't. produce anything. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. I'm trying to explain, but I'm trying to process this for myself as well here. And it's readily apparent to them. So he uses the metaphor of a rider and an elephant, where, okay, we have this giant elephant and we have this little tiny rider on top of the elephant. And the rider is up there thinking that they're in control of the elephant, but really they're not. They have no control at all. And they just are up there thinking that they do. So in this case, the elephant is the FI and the rider is the TE. So the elephant is deciding what direction to go, just like immediately. And the rider afterward is just sort of explaining like, oh yeah, I meant to go that way. I went that way because of this. And it's all just like sort of a post hoc explanation for what the elephant has already decided to do. And the rider is working as like a PR expert for the elephant's actions. And I'm not trying to like pick on FI here. Like obviously, like the same is true or can be said of TI and FE, where TI is your elephant because it's immediate, it's subjective, it's innate, it's readily apparent, and then FE will explain it to society in order to maintain good public relations there. I wanted to give another perspective in terms of like, okay, we picked on FI a little bit, let's pick on TI now. He talks about like how you cannot talk to somebody's rider because the rider's not in charge. When you're trying to convince somebody of something, you have to talk to their elephant. So if you're talking to a high FI user, you have to speak to their FI. You can't just like talk to their FE facts that they're giving you after the fact because it's really not important, okay? Same thing with TI and FE users. So if you guys are observant, some of you may have guessed that I am a hunter. And I'm a big fan of this American hunter and conservationist, Steve Rinella. And he has a documentary on Netflix called Stars in the Sky, where he explores the morality of hunting. And Steve is an ESTP, and I love the objective perspective that he brings to the table, because in the documentary, he brings on a vegan, and he brought absolutely the best vegan that he could possibly present, because it's not like, well, let's just bring this idiot on and we'll make fun of him and his perspective is going to be all like predictable and stupid and just like, you're hurting the animals, man, you know. Not that that's stupid, sorry. I didn't mean to offend anyone. But what the vegan talks about, it's something I really respected and appreciated, because he talks about how like a lot of times hunters will give the argument that like what we're doing is just like, it's very primal in nature, it's very natural for us since we've always done it. And he talks about how he knows that he is not doing what is natural, and that's because he's a moral being, and that's what moral beings do. And that as humans, we don't always follow through on our instincts, and that's what makes you moral. And when he said that, I really appreciated that it was like a nuanced perspective. It's one that I haven't heard before. It was a coherent argument. And he was talking to my elephant. He was talking to my TI, and it's not going to change what I'm doing. But it definitely made me stop and listen and at least respect that person and open up a conversation. Not that I'm talking to this person on the documentary, but I definitely could have a very calm conversation with them about hunting, and be open-minded to hearing his arguments and perspectives, because it lacked judgments, you know. So I hope that this video was insightful, helpful, or maybe just entertaining. So please give us a like and subscribe, and check out the TypeMatch app on iOS and Android to find friends and relationships by personality type.